Good morning, and thank you for joining us for the May Enterprise Risk Management Toolbox webinar. A few housekeeping notes before we get started. If you've dialed in by phone but have not yet logged in by computer and you'd like to see the slides that will be shown today, please point your web browser to readytalk.com. In the box where it says Participant Join a Meeting, enter the same access code that you used to join the call, 987-9821. Please stay aware of the level of background noise in your area, and if it starts to become noisy, please put your phone on mute. If you are called away from your phone, please do not put it on hold because that will cause your hold music to be transmitted to everybody else on the call. Instead, you can simply hang up, dial back in when you are available, and if the call is still going on, it will not be disrupted. We are leaving the phone lines open, so if questions come up, you can bring them up as they arise. Also, the chat box is available in the lower left corner of your screen. If you want to type a question there, I will wait for a pause and then relay it to the presenter for it to be addressed. There is also the raise hand button. So if you have a question would like to make a comment and don't want to interrupt, you can just click that button, and again, that will be shown to us at the presenter's end, and we will know to respond. With that, let me introduce today's presenters. Lori Jacinth is Vice President and Account Executive with Aon Construction Services Group. She has a professional career spanning over 22 years, specializing in large property and casualty brokerage, risk consulting, and insurance defense litigation. Josh Schultz is the Program Manager with Aon Construction Services Group, the UCIP Program Manager for UC, and began his wrap-up career over 10 years ago in Aon's Boston office. With that, I will hand the controls over to Lori.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining this morning. We hope that this information that we'll be giving you today will be very helpful for the UCIP program. I know it's relatively new, and we still have questions daily on it, so we look forward to working with you on it. Again, I'm Lori Jacinth. I'm from Aon Risk Insurance Services West in our Construction Services Group. We're here in San Francisco today. I am the UC Dedicated Account Executive. We cover all lines of construction insurance for you. That would be the UCIP program, the Master Builders Risk Program, Contractors Pollution Liability, and an Owner's Protected Professional Insurance Program. Also with me today is my colleague Josh Schultz. He is the UCIP Program Manager. Much like Kristen Bennett on the Master Builders Risk Program, Josh is the day-to-day contact for the UCIP program to ensure that that program is administered properly for you throughout project from the beginning to the very end. And as Emily stated, this is a general overview webinar. It will cover the University Controlled Insurance Program, also known as UCIP, and it is sponsored by University of California Office of the President Risk Services Department, and we thank them for the opportunity to present today. So to get started, we have the agenda. Sorry, I'm not clicking through the slides here.
There we go.
Is it coming up? Okay, so here we are for the agenda. Today we're going to overview the UCIP program. We're going to talk about the cost savings and streamlining concept behind the UCIP program. We're going to talk about the advantages of it. And we're also going to discuss what coverages are provided and then which are not provided under the UCIP so we can gain clarity on those. And then also who is covered and who is not covered under the program, what loss control services are provided both by Aon and the insurance company, what are the roles and the responsibilities of everyone involved in the UCIP, from the project team to the contractors to Aon and to the insurance company. We're going to cover an important form, the contractor and subcontractor safety declaration form, and the timing of submission of that form and why that's important. We're also going to review the project application and let you know where that's available at to get the project enrolled. And then what are the documents that the contractor and the subcontractors have to provide for this program. The contractor claims reporting procedures and the forms for reporting claims. And then we'll conclude and we'll have Q&A at that time, or as Emily mentioned, please feel free to either raise your hand or type something in the chat box, and she'll get with us to manage that process for you. So the next slide is slide 4. So it's the overview. So what is the University Controlled Insurance Program, also fondly referred to as the UCIP? This program was developed by the Office of the President Risk Services as a master construction rolling wrap-up insurance program. I think a lot of you are probably familiar with the term wrap-up insurance. So we want to clarify that this is a program that is very similar to that, but has very broad coverages. And it's a single insurance program for your construction projects, and it does cover workers' compensation, general liability, and excess liability for the projects that are enrolled into this program. It was implemented on January 1st, 2010, and it's for all projects that have construction values either approaching $25 million or over. And when we say approaching, we know that a lot of contracts go over their original construction value. And so this program does offer you an opportunity to put that project into this program if you feel that, you know, it's around $23 million or so and you think you're going to have project creep. Then this program is certainly available for any of those projects. So that's to look off on a one-off basis and just sort of think, is your project going to go over budget? And quite often they do. Also, I think it's important to note that this is a working smarter cost savings initiative. It's one of, I think, approximately 35 that are currently being sponsored right now by the Finance Office. It is a great cost-saving initiative specific to the construction projects. I think it's a good one to note that it's being supported throughout the UC system. It also it creates savings to reduce the total cost of construction. If you think about all the costs that go into construction and the many different projects that UC has across not only your campuses but the entire system-wide. I think that is the benefit of this program, is it can cover all of the projects in the system. It also provides broader and uniform coverage, which helps eliminate insurance gaps. And also, as we know, in these unfortunate financial times, a lot of the contractors have not been able to perform on their contracts or have literally gone out of business. So this program ensures your projects from start to finish, and UC can know that this program will be in place for your projects and for the tail exposure that can stem 10 years afterwards. It also promotes a safety culture to help further reduce your costs. As we know, claims are a part of savings, and the more that we can, try to meet the goal of zero claims, I know that is the goal of risk management. We know that that's not always doable, but that is our goal. So how do we do that? We do that through creating a safety culture, and that, I think you've all heard everybody's a risk manager, ERM. And our program includes best practices through a published safety manual, and then also AON reinforces these published best practices by actually visiting the project site, meeting with contractors, meeting with subcontractors, just reinforcing the message that everybody is a risk manager, and please follow the safety best practices because it's good for everybody. And lastly, AON is the broker and the administrator, so we provide your single point of contact to facilitate the UCIP program. Your first point of contact would be Josh Schultz, and we have monthly construction connection calls hosted by Cindy Lowe, Kristen Bennett, and myself, Lori Jacinth, and we also discuss any UCIP issues that you might have at that time, and then we can get Josh in touch with you to discuss anything that you might need after that. So moving to the next slide, this is sort of the concept of traditional insurance versus the UCIP program as you see it and know it today. So as you'll see, it does provide cost savings and streamlining, and if you look to the left of your chart here, the traditional insurance program has many different policies in place. each contractor, prime, and the sub has their own workers' compensation, general liability, and excess liability program. Moving over to the right side of the chart, the UCIP provides one single program with many fewer lines of coverage all in one policy. So you get your workers' compensation, you get your general liability, and you get your excess liability, which covers everyone that you see in that circle, from UC, the general contractor, your primes, your subs, construction managers, others that you would have on your site. And why is that important to know? It's on the left side of the chart, traditional insurance, you have the multiple insurers. That can create very litigious situation, a lot of finger pointing. Over to the right side, you'll see that there's fewer insurers that are going to be involved in the claims process if something were to go wrong. The traditional side of the house could have an inadequate limits. As you know, some of the smaller contractors do not purchase high limits of insurance. They don't have access to it. And this program does provide 100 million limits available to all contractors so that you're ensured that UC and everyone in the program has sufficient limits to cover should something dramatic happen at one of these sites. Also, on traditional delivery method, you can have coverage gaps because you could have many different policies with differing terms and conditions. The contractors could become uninsured and UC not know about it. They might have a lapse in coverage. You may collect your certificate of insurance and then they might not pay their insurance premium. They could be uninsured then, the next day, and you may not know about that. And then there is the cross-litigation that occurs with having the traditional program. You will still see some cross-litigation in the UCIP, but it's important to note that there'll be much fewer insurers involved in that process, and which means less lawyers, which means that it would cost less money. And then also, I think very important for construction projects is the completed operations coverage. As we know, in California, the tail coverage, the exposure for products completed operations is 10 years by law. And we don't know on the traditional delivery method what coverage is procured. It's not a normal part of the general liability insurance policy. You would have to actually specifically request this tail coverage. And we don't know if the traditional insurance method, if all of the contractors and the subs and the primes have actually procured that 10-year tail coverage. And the program that is in place through the UCIP program does contain that critical coverage. So moving on to the advantages of the program. Number one, in my mind, is the higher limits that are afforded. And also, it's important to note that those limits apply per project, so that there could be several projects enrolled into the UCIP, but each and every project will have a full tower of limits. If you think about the traditional insurance program and all of the contractors and subs, their policies may have coverage that applies to all of the projects that they're working on. And so that would mean that they may be completely uninsured based on the volume of work. Also, while the UCIP program has been put into play for 5 years, the limits are reinstated annually, so that if there were to be a large loss and you had a long project, your limits would be reinstated the next year, so that you could, hopefully you wouldn't do this, but if you needed to tap back into the limits. Again, we said that it has broad coverage terms and conditions. We have all follow the best practices for the latest extensions of coverage, and those are in your UCIP program. And you have, I think really important is now the safety side of the house. You have enhanced loss control and safety. The general contractor is still responsible for providing the safety at the projects. However, with our program, as I mentioned, Aon does visit the job site regularly and actually has a list of 20 points that they review each and every time that they are there. They sit down with the contractors to reinforce the safety best practices to make sure they're following them. If they're not being followed, they immediately flag that and make sure that they do get back on track. So I think that is important for you to know. On the public relations side of the house, you have direct control of your claims process so that you can insert yourselves if need be. It also allows other contractors who may not be able to bid on UC jobs because they don't have proper insurance to participate on UC jobs by being afforded the coverage here. There's cost savings that are achieved through leveraging your volume purchasing. As you know, UC is quite large. You purchase insurance across many different lines of coverage, and so that is reflected in your reduced premiums. It eliminates the redundant premiums that you could see through the complication of having many different policies. And it eliminates the overhead for the contractors on those redundant insurance policies, because each and every contractor or subcontractor would have their insurance costs, and then on top of that they would have their overhead costs overlaid, costing UC more money. So this eliminates that. And again, minimizes the cross-litigation and the subrogation, again through fewer insurers and fewer policies. Bottom line, the goal is to save UC money by reducing not only your insurance premiums, but your losses and the litigation and the risk of uninsured losses. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Josh Schultz, who's your UCIP program manager, and he's going to take it from here.
Great. Thank you very much, Lori. Good morning, everyone on the call. Thanks for taking time to review the UCIP program with us. The first 4 slides that I'm going to be discussing with you today, I think are particularly critical in understanding the program. These slides are going to take a look at what is covered, what coverage is provided, what coverage is not provided, who specifically is covered and who specifically is not covered under this set of coverages. The first slide gives us a diagram of which insurance coverages are provided by the program. It's coverage for work at or emanating from the project site, for workers' compensation and employers' liability, for work at the project site for all enrolled parties. It's critical that parties enrolled to get coverage. They do not otherwise get coverage. General liability is offered for third-party bodily injury and property damage arising from the project site for all of these enrolled parties. And you're also given that products and completed operations liability tail for 10 years, which is the statute of repose in California, as Lori mentioned previously. Taking a look at our diagram on the left, a highlight of this diagram is the $100 million in excess limits provided. This is far greater than most of your subcontractors are certainly going to be able to provide, and in many cases greater than what your general contractors are able to provide. So if you think about your typical contractor on a construction project, may have $5 million in limits, something like that, even lower in many cases. But this program is providing a uniform $10 million in coverage for all contractors enrolled for work on the project. And that provides a far greater protection to the university for those liability exposures. Moving on, let's take a look at what coverage is not provided. Now, what we've done here, we've tried to package together coverages that would typically be required by anyone working on a project, but there are a variety of coverages also typical to construction that are not provided under the UCIP program itself. The first would be automobile liability, so anyone coming and going from the project in an auto, loading and unloading trucks, things of that nature. That's not covered. AON will be tracking auto liability certificates for your general contractors and your prime tier contractors to make sure that they have adequate limits according to their contract requirements. We're also not covering damage to the project. There is a builder's risk program in place, which is handled separately, also by AON. That would be Lori and Kristen. Both are working on that program. Pollution liability is also not covered under the UCIP program. So any contractors that would have a pollution liability exposure, their contract would require them to provide this pollution liability, but it is not covered by the UCIP program itself. Professional liability, that's not covered, so that's going to be errors and omissions. It's the type of coverage you'd see from anyone with a design responsibility on your project. Product warranty is not covered. So, for instance, if a piece of equipment is installed in the building and then doesn't work properly, that sort of manufacturer warranty is not something that's covered under the program. Contractor property is not covered under the program. So we're talking about owned, rented, and borrowed equipment and materials not to be included in the project. These sorts of items would be covered typically under their equipment floater as part of their inland marine policy that a contractor would typically carry, and it is not that coverage is not replaced in any way by the wrap-up program. It also does not cover off-site workers' compensation and general liability. So if you have a contractor, for instance, that does work at their own facility or at other projects they may be working on, the UCIP does not extend to cover them at these facilities. If you have a specific off-site location, such as a staging area or something like that, where work is dedicated to the project site, we can potentially schedule that location under the project with the insurance carrier and get coverage there, but otherwise off-site work is not typically going to be covered. Moving on. So now we've taken a look at what insurances are covered and what are not. Again, the primary insurances are going to be workers' compensation and general liability coverage with excess over those coverages to $100 million in limits. But now let's take a look at which parties are covered and which parties are not covered. For those parties that are covered, first it's important to highlight that the university itself is the first named insured on the general liability policy. We are not enrolling the university for workers' compensation under the program. University staff already has their own workers' compensation scheme, and in many cases there will not be university staff actively working in construction processes on those projects. Next, eligible enrolled construction managers, contractors, and subcontractors performing construction work at the project site. They would be enrolled for both workers' compensation and general liability. So the idea is any party that you have who's actively performing construction operations on your site would typically be enrolled for coverage under the program. But that being said, there are some specific exclusions in the policy, and that leads us to our next slide, slide 10, which shows us who is not covered under the program. And again, these areas are dictated in many cases by the policies themselves, so if we were to attempt to enroll one of these scopes, there really is no coverage for their specific sets of exposure, so it's important to understand that. Now, the first and one of the more critical scopes that's not covered under the program would be hazardous waste removal, remediation in our transport companies, or abatement contractors. Now, these are contractors where a huge portion of their exposure is going to be pollution in nature or environmental in nature, and as we noted, those coverages are not provided under the program, so they would not be enrolled, and in fact, those scopes are specifically excluded by the program. Next, another key area for you to be aware of, structural demolition contractors are not enrolled in the program. Now, if you have what we call light demolition, where just perhaps some drywall is being removed or carpet torn out or things like that, that could potentially be enrolled in the program. But any contractor performing structural demolition where they're taking down load-bearing elements of the building and things of that nature would not be covered under the program. Next, we're going to look at some categories of contractors that do not have real on-site exposures on the project. So vendors or off-site fabricators, they would not be covered. Again, the purpose of this package of coverages is to cover work being done on the project site, and a vendor or off-site fabricator would not have an exposure there. Their prime exposures are going to be off of the project site. Suppliers or material dealers, again, would not be covered for the same reason. Temporary labor services, these are specifically excluded from the policy. Truckers, haulers, drivers, and others who merely pick up, deliver, or carry materials, personnel, parts, or equipment to or from the project site. an important point to be aware of in understanding why these contractors are excluded. One, they spend most of their time off of the site. Now you may say, hey, this guy or this company is doing loading and unloading on the project site. That seems like a lot of work. Shouldn't they be covered for that? But those sorts of exposures, again, are typically covered under auto liability. And auto liability is not covered under the program. So therefore, they are not to be enrolled. Next, architects, surveyors, engineers, and soil testing engineers and their consultants. Again, these are contractors where their prime exposure is going to be professional liability in nature, and those coverages are not provided under the UCIP program. And any other persons or entities that the university, acting in its sole discretion, elects to exclude, even if otherwise eligible. So the university does have the ability to choose to keep a contractor out if they have some reason for making that decision. But typically, anyone working on the project site that does not fall under one of these categories would be enrolled unless some sort of special exception was made. Now, we're going to move on. Before we take a look at roles and responsibilities, I would like to highlight the loss control services that are provided to your UCIP project, both by Aon and by Zurich, the carrier for Tower 1, and Chartis in the case of the Mission Bay project. Now, we do provide loss control consulting services, but safety responsibilities still do remain with your general contractors. It's their contractual obligation to maintain a safe workplace and do whatever necessary to keep the workplace safe. So we do not alleviate the responsibility for the general contractor to do that. However, Aon does provide additional services to keep your loss costs low and keep safety in place on your project site. Critical and central to those services is our loss control visits. Our loss control team, along with the carrier's team, will visit your sites periodically to conduct project safety surveys. The results of this survey will be shared both with UC staff and the general contractor staff. They're going to review with the general contractor the project safety survey findings and follow up with that general contractor to correct any safety action items which may have resulted from that survey. Now, I would look at these loss control services as really a great service that's being provided to UC. It's just an opportunity to keep your losses down and keep your project on the right track. In most cases, if our loss control consultants do find any issues on the project site, general contractors are more than willing to work with us to correct those and keep the project safe. In the event of a serious claim, our loss control consultants are available to perform root cause analysis and meet with the general contractors and UC staff to review the findings. And they're also going to work to reinforce with the contractors some critical safety items, among them the mandatory safety training and compliance guidelines, which are dictated by the safety manual issued for each UCIP job. The MPN, that's the Medical Provider Network implementation in California. Contractors are required to get medical treatment for injuries sustained on the job site from the identified medical provider network. They have the option to opt out, but they have to opt out in writing prior to the injury. Our safety consultants are going to look to also reinforce post-accident drug testing. In the event of an accident, the injured employee is required to participate in drug testing, and the employer of that employee is required to bear the cost of that testing. Next, they're also going to be looking to reinforce their return to work program. We ask that all contractors working on the project site make modified duty work available to get contractors back to work wherever possible. Now let's back up a little bit and take a look at roles and responsibilities of the key players in the UCIP program. We're going to look at both what the AON team does for UC, what the carrier does for the program, what the UC project team responsibilities would be in a successful UCIP program, and what the contractor's responsibilities would be. Now, there's a lot of information on this slide, and I don't want to drag you down in too many details, but there are some things that I really would like to highlight with you. So first with AON, we are available to meet with the project team. There are a variety of meetings that we're able to conduct, but it's important to know that the first meetings would be well in advance of contract award, so it's important that the project team work with AON to get them set up where needed. They could be orientations either for the campus staff or the project team. We can attend pre-bid meetings, kickoff meetings, and periodic meetings as needed throughout the life of the project. We help the project team by providing a UCIP cost calculation so they can budget for the premiums they'll be responsible for. We attract the Exhibit 1B from GC and Primes. Now, we'll talk about the Exhibit 1B more specifically in the next few slides. We also provide a number of welcome documents to the project teams and contractors, from certificates of insurance showing enrollment for enrolled contractors, the safety manuals, the forms, the claims kit. And we also work to identify the treating clinic for each of your project sites so they know where their injured workers need to go in the event of an injury. We also collect the payroll information. That's done via our website, aonrap.com, and we work with the contractors to provide any training they may need to report their payroll. As I noted on the previous slide, we have safety and loss control consulting services that are offered. In the event of a claim, we offer claims advocacy to work to settle the claims as quickly and as economically as possible. And we'll also assist your project and project closeout at the end of the work. The carriers, Zurich for most of the Tower 1 jobs, Chartis for the Mission Bay project. They underwrite the program. They issue the actual policies. Now, the UCIP Tower 1 Zurich program has one general liability policy, which all the projects are added to. However, they do also issue individual workers' compensation policies annually for all of the subcontractors. They also provide safety surveys in conjunction with our AON loss control staff. They are responsible for paying claims and handle the administration of those claims. The UC project team, the most fundamental points that I want to make you aware of with the UC project team is, one, that the UC project team is going to need to be in communication with AON well before sending out bids. This will allow AON to direct them to the correct UCIP contract types, which are available on the UCOP website. And will also allow us to coordinate them for budgeting for their UCIP program and handle enrollment of the UCIP program. As noted here on our slide, the project team needs to include the UCIP language in their bid and contract documents. They also need to obtain the signed contractor safety declaration. That's the 1B that's been mentioned from the GCR Prime. Notice this item also appears in the AON responsibilities, but we're really collecting those as a backstop. There's some information that the project team will want to get from that 1B prior to final award of a contract. So it is important that they collect that form ahead of awarding the contract. The project team is also responsible for tracking those coverages which are not provided by the program, with the exception of auto liability, which AON does track. However, we do not track the pollution coverage, and we do not track the errors and emissions coverage. The project team is responsible to submit the UCIP project application to AON, so coverage is not automatic for your project. You need to enroll it prior to the start of work. And the project is ultimately responsible for paying the insurance premium as well. Now your contractors, on the other hand, they are responsible for removing project insurance costs from their bids in accordance with the UCIP guidelines. This is outlined in their instructions to bidders. It's outlined in the UCIP manual as well. Essentially, the university has purchased a set of coverages at the university's expense, so they should not have to pay for those same coverages through your contractor's contract price. So we ask that those prices are removed from their bids. The contractors are also responsible to see that the UCIP provisions in their contracts are also passed down to the contracts of their subcontractors. So this is going to be the Article 11 in your general conditions. That needs to be passed down, and also the supplementary conditions. Those would need to be passed down as well. They need to ensure that all of their subcontractors enroll in the program prior to work and stay in compliance throughout the life of the program. They're responsible for maintaining a safe job site. They're responsible for payroll reporting. They're responsible for ultimately giving notice of their work completion via the AON Form 5, and they're responsible for immediately reporting any claims that they've incurred while working on the project site. Now, going on to slide 13, we're going to take a look now at some of the forms which we believe you'll want to be aware of for the UCIP program. The first is that Exhibit 1B, which has come up a few times throughout our discussion. Now, this Exhibit 1B is a declaration of contractor and subcontractor minimum occupational safety and health qualifications. Essentially, if they're in compliance with 3 statements, then they should be able to sign this form. The form attests that they've had no serious and or willful labor code violations in the past 5 years. It attests that their workers' compensation experience modification rate has averaged below 1.15 for the past 5 years. And it also attests that the contractor has instituted an injury prevention program that's in compliance with the labor code. Now, this form was designed to track items and also maintain compliance with California Government Code Section 4420, which is a code that allows the university to have the UCIP program in place. Now, moving on, let's take a look at the project application. I think if there's one item of paperwork I would like the participants in this call to be aware of, really it's the project application, because this is the form that initiates coverage for any construction project you may have. It's available at the UCOP website. You'll see the URL there on the side of the slide. It's a fairly simple form to complete. It just collects some information that we need to provide to the underwriters, such as the anticipated project volume and the estimated start and end dates for the project, basic contact information, and that sort of thing.
And I'm just going to jump in here real quick. For those of you who are very familiar with the Master Builders Risk Program, the reason why we need a different project application for UCIP is there are a couple different reasons. First of all, the UCIP coverages typically incept prior to builder's risk coverage, and then also the construction volume or the contract value, it has a different definition than what is insured under the Master Builders Risk Program. So while we haven't had that come up, I think it's just important to note that there are 2 separate programs, and the information, while a couple of the fields are redundant, but for the most part, it's a different program, and that's why we ask that there be 2 due to the timing and the differing information required therein. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Lori. And that definition of UCIP construction value is made clear on the form, so anyone completing that form would want to make sure that they've read and understand the definition given there. Moving on to slide 15, let's just take a look at some of the contractor forms. And the critical thing that I want the team to understand, one is that AON will be working to collect all these forms. We are not looking to have the university or our general contractor staff dragged down into collecting these from all the subcontractors. We want to provide that service to you, and we do. I also want you to be aware that there is a project application enrollment form, but there is also a contractor-specific enrollment form that each individual contractor will need to complete prior to starting work in order to have coverage under the program. So that is the AON Form 3, the UCIP Contractor Enrollment Application. We also collect from the contractors the Accord 25 form. It's your typical certificate of insurance. We just look for coverage for off-site workers' comp and general liability, and also that on-site auto coverage that we've mentioned. We collect this certificate from your general contractors and your prime tier contractors as well. We collect that Contractor Exhibit 1B, which is the declaration, the safety declaration. However, again, this is a backstop. The project team should be looking at this prior to award, so they are aware that the contractor has an adequate experience modifier and is capable of maintaining the necessary safety standards. We also collect the AON Form 1A. This is an insurance cost worksheet. We collect that along with rate pages from their policy in order to create a picture of what their insurance costs would be had they done their work under their own coverages. We can then take this information to get a model of what insurance costs would be for the entire project under a traditional insurance delivery method and compare this to the costs under the UCIP to get an idea of how much money has been saved by implementing the program. The AON Form 4, that's the payroll report that I mentioned. So essentially, everything that I've discussed so far, the AON Form 3 down through the Form 1A, these are forms that are typically submitted up front prior to beginning work. So once that packet of information is complete, the month-to-month paperwork requirement is very, very light for your contractors. We're only looking for this AON Form 4 payroll report, which can be submitted online. It's due at the 10th of the following month. And it's a very simple form. It just asks basically what hours and what payroll they've had on the project. Then at the end of work, when they're done with their work on your UCIP project, they then would complete an AON Form 5. It's a notice of work completion letting us know that they're done with their work and no longer require coverage under the program. Now, with that, I'm going to pass it back to Lori, who's going to discuss the contractor claims reporting for UCIP projects.
Great. Thank you, Josh. So essentially, this program is the responsibility of the contractor to report the claims. We do, because it is their workers, excuse me, let me back up. Their workers are the ones who are being or could be injured, so therefore it's important that they be in control of the claims reporting process for workers' compensation. And then also general liability. However, as respects to general liability coverage, it's important that UC Campus Risk Management be apprised of any general liability claim that comes through. Those tend to be a little more complicated, and UC is insured for general liability, whereas you're not on the workers' compensation. So it is important that they provide the claims forms to Campus Risk Management and to AON, and then we will also, if they do not report to Office of the President of Risk Services, then we will. The claims forms are available from the general contractor or the construction manager. They're typically kept in a book that is in the construction trailer or whatever site has been designated as the go-to for the project site itself. And within there, the binders that are at the construction trailer in the manual, you will see the actual reporting instructions specific to not only workers' compensation and what the medical provider network is and the 800 numbers to report claims or to report online or to call someone. And then also the general liability claims forms, and those would also have instructions to the completer to report the claim directly to the insurance carrier and to the university so that they can handle it accordingly. So with that, we are right at about 47 minutes, so thank you very much for your patience. And was wondering if there are any questions. I don't see any hands raised, but we can open up this time now to answer any questions that you might have with respect to this program. Have we put you to sleep?
Not at all. It's just a lot of information that just takes, some time to absorb.
It does. It is.
It's like a Thanksgiving feast. You have all this information and tools, and it's wonderful. So now let's see, what are we going to do to put it to use? But, this is step one of letting people know it's out there and getting thoughts going on how to use it.
Absolutely.
And your service orientation, I've heard again and again, we're here to help you. We're always available. That's so good for clinging people like me. I always need help.
Yeah, it's not a problem. We also have the monthly construction connection calls, and we welcome anybody to those. Typically, those are held with contract administrators, and then also risk management is invited to those on the monthly basis. And that also provides a forum to ask questions as they arise. Construction projects are very complicated in many different ways, and it's difficult sometimes. So we want to make sure that this is out there and you have forms available. We're also going to be uploading some of the UCIP forms directly to the Risk Services website. Now that we have projects that are going to close out here, in the next 3 or 4 months. We want to make sure that all of the forms are in a place that people can obtain the latest versions, and those will be on the UCIP Risk Services website under our construction link there.
Lori, there's a question in the chat box. Are there circumstances under which we would not want to enroll a project above the $25 million threshold in the UCIP program? Is it mandatory?
Well, let's see. I'm just rereading the question here. Are there circumstances? Okay, so yes, there are circumstances that would preclude a particular contractor or subcontractor from the program. However, the program is mandatory, and so if you refer back to the slide that states who is not eligible, then those folks would not be enrolled. Having said that, the project itself should be enrolled anytime it is $25 million or over, or anytime it approaches the $25 million mark and you think that it's going to go over $25 million in values, which they typically do. So again, the categories that are not able to enroll, I'm going to scroll back here to page 10. I'm not sure if you have handouts of this, but this is page 11, who is not covered. So these particular contractors would not be covered. However, the program the project should still be enrolled into the program. Does that answer your question, Georgianne?
Yes, it does. Thanks very much.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Again, thank you everyone for joining us. We are here to assist you, and please call us or shoot us an email anytime, and we'll be more than happy to walk you through the program.
Thank you for joining us, everybody. We hope to see you for next month's Toolbox.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.